Welcome to episode 84 of Fascinating, a Star Trek podcast. Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home.
In this week's movie, Kirk and his crew must return to Earth to face charges following the events surrounding the Genesis device and Spock's restoration. Before they arrive, however, a probe of unknown origin threatens all life on the planet, forcing a dangerous trip through time to retrieve an extinct form of life that may hold the answers to the probe's demands. But can they make the journey in their damaged Klingon ship? Or is the plan too outrageous to work?
You guys like Italian?
No.
Yes.
Yeah,
No.
no.
Yes.
No.
Yes. I love Italian. And so do you.
Yes.
Good evening, Ian. How are you?
Recovering well, how are you?
I'm not too bad. Have a few Italians when you were on your sickbed?
Well, not when I had COVID, but the week before I had a range of microwavable Italian lunches, so I couldn't be bothered going out when I was on holiday.
Delicious.
Oh yeah.
Microwavable lunches.
Microwavable
Nothing but the best for you.
Italian stuff, yeah. Not quite creamy sauce.
Italian stuff made in a factory in somewhere like Kidderminster, probably.
Undoubtedly. You like Italian?
I love Italian.
Yeah. Did you enjoy the movie?
I did, and for once I actually had to listen to your summary there. Normally, as you know, I ignore it and I mess about on my phone and things.
Yeah.
But we've not recorded for a few weeks because of your illness. Well, I mean, how bad was it, the old COVID? How bad?
Oh.
I'm not trying to underplay. I know it's affected plenty of people very seriously.
Have you seen those documentaries with the folk on the ventilators and stuff?
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad.
No.
But it also wasn't asymptomatic. I had symptoms. I was
A runny
coughing.
nose.
Well, no, I was coughing a lot. Couldn't sleep. I was tired a lot. But not that different from usual.
Yeah, that's what I normally feel like.
Yeah.
Knackered. A couple of energy drinks will sort you out.
It should do. It's not so much. The problem wasn't so much how I felt as making anybody else sick. So I was
Well, that's
locked
it.
away for a week and a half.
So we're back.
We are for the final run.
Mm-hmm. Movie 4.
It was a good one. Although I wonder, it's generally very well received and reviewed and loved by people. If you'd waited 2 years for this film, would you find it lightweight? Apparently not.
I don't think lightweight's a problem. I've said this
Yeah.
before. I think where Star Trek and perhaps the genre can get, for me, a little bit boring is when they try to be too serious. They take themselves too seriously and they think they've got bigger concepts and more, grander visions than what really is just a bit of an adventure romp.
Sure.
And when you stick to that, it's just fun. Don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah, but if you, for example, you had these episodes like Tribbles and whatever else where you had a light-hearted episode, but it was 1 out of 25 or however, 1 out of 10 at that time, and you had another episode next week if that wasn't what you liked. If you didn't like the comedic side of things, this is your only Star Trek in a 4-year period between the movie before and the movie after.
Yeah, but it wasn't. I mean, it's not a comedy movie. There's elements of light-heartedness in it.
Yeah.
Which I think, I really enjoyed this movie, and I like the fact that it was for parts of it were set on Earth in modern times.
Yeah.
It was good to see.
It was a good adventure story.
Yeah,
It wasn't much of an adversary, but
but I think they got the balance right between adventure and comedy.
yeah, I mean, there was almost no threat at all.
Well, really, there was the destruction of the entire world.
Yes, but there was
moments
nothing
away.
throughout the adventure. There was nothing. They weren't trying to overcome anything other than can we do this time travel? So the whales, they were easy to get. The rescuing Chekhov was easy to do.
They were against the clock, I think.
I suppose there's that. Yeah. Yes. Well, yeah. They tried to introduce that element when the whales were. Yeah, we'll get to that.
And also the act of time travel itself posed an inherent risk, which is quite important. And the way back, actually, I've got something to say about that.
Okay. Should we talk about our social accounts?
Sure.
As usual, people can find us on astartrekpodcast.com. There's a post up for every episode of the show. Also on social media, we're on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, where we're at Trek Podcast. You can leave us comments there and we'll try and get back to you. And you can also find us on all the usual podcast sites and on YouTube.
Yeah.
And also now on the Colombo podcast, YouTube, we're releasing a new episode every day there.
Every single day, yeah.
So if you like that sort of thing, subscribe to that channel.
There'll be some people only listening on YouTube have found us there and think that we are just, really, really
efficient,
hard-working, just pumping this content out.
Yeah, they'll be really confused now hearing this.
Yeah.
It's been like 2 months of an episode every day. What are you talking about? Never mind. Shall we start the movie?
Let's crack on. An interesting start.
Okay.
It's a dedication we get on the screen.
Yes. To the Challenger.
Yeah.
It's just contemporaneous.
When did this movie come out? This was...
winter of 86.
Okay, it would have been the same year then. It was Challenger 86? Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. And we find ourselves on the Federation starship Saratoga.
Do we? Have you skipped the whole pre-credits bit where they recapped Star Trek 3?
Oh, I may have. When it started, I thought, yeah, maybe I did.
Yes, so you've got a captain's log where Kirk's narrating what happened in the last 2 movies.
Is that? I've got the first captain's log I have is 8390.
No, 8031.
Ah, right, okay, tell me about this then.
I was thinking, missed the first 10 minutes of the movie.
I'm not watching 3 minutes of credits.
No, it was, so Kirk talks about looking back on their most recent adventure and asks, he could not have asked for a more dependable ship or crew. Heroic sacrifice of Spock, and then what happened with recovering Spock and leaving their ship, taking the Klingon ship, Spock being regenerated.
That's fine, I watched all this.
Mysterious ceremony on Vulcan.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they know that there's punishment waiting for them on Earth, and then while he's saying all that, we're seeing clips from the previous movies.
Oh, I don't need to watch that. I only watched it last week.
Oh, yeah, but it's for people who didn't watch the other movies. Yeah,
oh, that's fine. Oh, we've all watched that recently, haven't we, guys?
And then we get opening credits, and then we get the Saratoga.
Right, that's us up to speed then. The crew detect a tubular probe, and don't be so. What?
A tubular probe.
That's what it is.
Okay.
Are you being rude here?
It reminded sounds funny.
Oh,
it reminded me of the beginning of...
Sorry. Grow up. If there's one thing that I cannot abide, it's childish innuendo.
Sure, the only thing you enjoy.
No, from other people.
It reminds me a bit of the start of the motion picture. You've got this unknown thing coming towards Earth.
Their captain instructs that a universal peace message be sent out before asking a weird old dude to get to our Starfleet command.
Indeed.
He was an odd-looking person. I don't think it was a human, was it?
A non-known race.
Was it, yeah?
Of some kind. Just alien person.
Yeah. Interesting look. Bit creepy.
Well, it keeps things interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's probably figured out what they actually are.
Sure.
Written it down somewhere in a book.
And given that language.
I don't think so.
Brought it to a convention and found a girlfriend there who speaks the same language, and they get married and dress up in all that gear.
In that one, from that one scene.
That one thing, yeah. Good on them.
They do get hold of Starfleet, showing that this person is more competent than Uhura. And Starfleet tells them to keep tracking this probe, and they will analyse the transmissions and offer advice as necessary.
At headquarters of Starfleet, we then enter a Federation Council meeting that is reviewing footage of Kirk's recent antics, and doesn't paint him in a great light, especially in the eyes of the Klingons.
Behold the quintessential devil in these matters, James T. Kirk, renegade and terrorist. Not only is he responsible for the murder of a Klingon crew, the theft of the Klingon vessel, see now the real plot and intentions. Even as this Federation was negotiating a peace treaty with us, Kirk was secretly developing the Genesis torpedo, conceived by Kirk's son, and test detonated by the Admiral himself. And the result of this awesome energy was euphemistically called the Genesis Planet, a secret base from which to launch the annihilation of the Klingon people. We demand the extradition of Kirk. We demand justice.
Klingon justice is a unique point of view, Mr. President.
Sorry.
Genesis was perfectly named. The creation of life, not death. The Klingons shed the first blood while attempting to possess its secrets.
Vulcans are well known as the intellectual puppets of this Federation.
Your vessel did destroy USS Grissom. Your men did kill Kirk's son. Do you deny these events?
We deny nothing. We have the right to preserve our race.
You have the right to commit murder?
Silence! Silence! Be no further outbursts from the floor.
Mr. President, I've come to speak on behalf of the accused.
Personal bias. His son was saved by Kirk.
Mr. Ambassador, with all respect, the Council's deliberations are over.
Then Kirk goes unpunished?
Admiral Kirk has been charged with 9 violations of Starfleet regulations.
Starfleet regulations? That's outrageous! Remember this well. There shall be no peace as long as Kirk lives.
He sounds a little bit like Christopher Lloyd.
Just a little. He'll be back.
Also, like they're outraged that was it Sarek?
Yeah.
He had a personal bias. It's like, yeah, that's what it means when you speak up on their behalf.
Yeah, you're presenting their position. Yes, I did enjoy the guy at the end who just yelled pompous ass for no reason. I don't know if that was meant to be part of it or if someone just was talking to the director.
We then have what I thought was the first Captain's Log, 8390.
Okay.
They are 3 months exiled on Vulcan, and McCoy has named their Klingon ship the HMS Bounty.
You remember the story of the HMS Bounty?
Remind me.
I think it's a mutiny about 500 years ago.
They really loved the chocolate bars with
From their point of
coconut.
view.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he says you're mutineers of 500 years ago. He literally says that.
Yeah, there are famous, lots of famous movies and books of Mutiny on the Bounty.
But there wasn't really a mutiny here, was there?
No.
Who mutinied? Kirk didn't mutiny. He wasn't on a ship with anybody to mutiny against.
No.
So it's not appropriate.
No.
It's a stupid name.
It is. Anyway,
Carry on.
Vulcan. Kirk and the other 5, Spock, he's not present, vote to return to Earth and face whatever they have coming to them. And Scotty says that he can have them ready to travel in one day.
And McCoy wishes that Starfleet would send a nicer ship for them, but instead they have to fly back in the Klingon cruiser that they stole in the previous movie.
Yeah, a flea trap, he calls it. But Kirk points out that they could learn from this, and it has a cloaking device, which will become very important.
It will. McCoy is still concerned about the smell.
He's a man of class and taste.
Indeed. Well, you imagine that Klingons probably do smell bad to humans.
They then look up and see Spock alone atop a distant cliff.
Yes, and he then goes inside where he plays computer games.
Yes, it's inside a cave we watch as Spock polishes up on his re-education with some fancy tech, but is stumped by being asked how he feels.
He is, so he gets some reassurance from his human mother, who happens to be there.
Yeah, she explains that his retraining has only been from a Vulcan perspective.
Indeed, and he says he has to go to Earth with the others to give his evidence.
Yeah, she doesn't disagree. She points out that they helped him as he was their friend and agrees they make illogical decisions, though she clearly doesn't see this as a bad thing.
Well, she's not pushing too hard here, but she's kind of gently reminding Spock that, these guys did you a favour here. They could have saved themselves and left you, and they didn't.
But she's pushing against an open door.
Yeah. We should say we don't really see Amanda again, but it was a good little cameo.
It was.
It was just wave when they leave, but it doesn't really. Yes, on the Saratoga, they're at the neutral zone, and the probe is very close.
It's sending out a beating call whose wave sign is impacting on their systems. And so you heard. And so the captain orders a yellow alert.
Yeah, it's like it's a wee bit bad. It's not too bad.
Yeah, don't panic too much.
The ship then begins to lose power and start to drift.
Yeah, their thrusters have been neutralised and they see that their circuit boards begin to smoke.
It's not ideal.
No. Panic, red alert at this point, I'd say.
Well, they send a distress call anyway to Starfleet Command where the President is asking Admiral Cartwright for an update.
He's got bad news.
Yeah, the probe is headed directly towards Earth and its signal is disabling everything it comes into contact with.
It's damaging everything in its path, including Klingon ships.
Yes. 2 Klingon ships have been lost. So, destroyed? We don't know. 2 Federation starships and 3 smaller vessels have been neutralised, which we assume doesn't mean destroyed.
The Yorktown, that's brought onto the screen.
Yes, the Yorktown in there. Captain says his chief engineer is trying to deploy a makeshift solar sail to generate enough power to keep themselves alive.
Yeah, the despondent captain, I think he knows what's coming.
Yeah, they're going to lose power and be sitting there.
Back in Vulcan, on the Klingon ship.
Are we going to call it the Bounty or are we going to call it the Klingon ship? What do you think?
Or what's it called again? The Bird of Prey?
Yeah, any of those.
I just call it the Klingon ship.
I think I've written the Bounty mostly.
That's awkward.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Right. The crew are in place.
Yes, everyone's ready to go.
Even though it's not the Enterprise, everything is operational.
Seems to be. Cloaking device has been repaired and is available in, apparently, all flight modes.
Oh, that's good. Kirk tells everyone not coming with them to deboard, and then he says his goodbye and thank you to Saavik.
Yeah, she's come to give him an awkward recap of his son's death 3 months later.
Yeah.
It's a little bit weird. And it's just presumably to give her some lines.
Yeah, just as Spock enters and they have an awkward goodbye, that's because she banged him as a kid.
When he was a kid?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, he obviously doesn't want to talk about it.
No, he was a bit embarrassed. Wasn't that good. He then declined his invitation to call Kirk Jim and apologises for his casual dress, claiming to have lost his uniform before taking up his station.
Yeah, he's wearing a dressing gown.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
This concerns McCoy.
Yes, because he's worried that Spock's not ready to work.
Yeah, he's not working on all thrusters. But a less than convincing Kirk tells him, yeah, it's all right. I'll come back to him once we get up to speed. Don't worry about it.
Muscle memory.
Sulu is then told to take them home and they set off.
And Saavik and Amanda wave.
Can be their goodbyes, yeah.
That's them out of the movie.
Is it?
Yeah.
We're on a space station.
Yeah, some kind of dock.
The pulsating probe passes by and effectively causes it to be shut down.
Yep, all the ships are neutralised and the probe continues into Earth orbit and starts to suck up water from the oceans.
Yeah, and we see from its undercarriage, it's got a thing dangling down.
Yeah, to collect the waters.
Yeah. That reminds me of a joke from the Three Amigos.
On you go.
They see a plane in the sky and I think it's Martin Short, maybe, I'm not sure, but he says, oh, that's a mail plane. And I think it's Chevy or Steve Martin says, how can you tell? It says, because you can see its little thing dangling down.
Right, okay. That wasn't worth waiting for.
Obviously, they deliver it far better than I did. Yeah, you have to see it to appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, anyway. It's causing weather phenomenon on Earth that aren't...
Chaos, absolute chaos it's causing. On the bridge of the Klingon ship, the gang are now apparently 1.6 hours from Earth and are surprised to find no Federation vessels escorting them.
Well, they're not seeing any at all. There should be some somewhere. Uhura says that there's overlapping messages on comms.
Very muddled. Meanwhile, McCoy takes the opportunity to try and break some ice with his old friend in an attempt to ascertain more about the afterlife.
Hi. Busy? Uhura is busy. I am monitoring.
Well, I just wanted to say, it sure is nice to have your Katra back in your head, not mine. What I mean is, I may have carried your soul, but I sure couldn't fill your shoes.
My shoes.
Forget it. Perhaps we could cover a little philosophical ground. Life, death, life, things of that nature.
I did not have time on Vulcan to review the philosophical disciplines.
Come on, Spock, it's me, McCoy. You really have gone where no man's gone before. Can't you tell me what it felt like?
It would be impossible to discuss the subject without a common frame of reference.
You're joking.
A joke is a story with a humorous climax.
You mean I have to die to discuss your insights on death?
Forgive me, Doctor. I'm receiving a number of distress calls.
I don't doubt it.
Interesting reference by McCoy there to where no man has gone before, as if he hears Kirk saying that at the start of every mission.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, why is he using the phrase if it's a familiar one?
That's a good point.
Maybe they say it every time they go for a new mission. It's like the traditional Starfleet Bon Voyage speech.
Let's just assume that. Starfleet headquarters, we get another visual of the weather disruption, and a Starfleet officer notes that cloud coverage is increasing dramatically around the world.
So is communism, because Leningrad has returned.
Did it?
Yeah.
Pen.
Well, in this report, they say Leningrad has 100% cloud cover.
Alright, I didn't notice that. A red alert is called just as they hear the pulsing beat above them, and the Admiral points out the obvious that they cannot survive without the sun.
And the President seems to be aware of that fact.
Sarek enters.
Yeah, he likes to potter around, doesn't he?
The President informs him that they can't find a way to answer the probe.
He picks a great moment for a philosophical discussion, doesn't he?
Yeah. He responds that it is difficult if they don't understand the question. That's not helpful.
I'm going to stand here and be mysterious.
Before suggesting a planetary distress signal while they still can, and the worried leader nods in agreement.
Indeed. Meanwhile, on the Bounty, Uhura tells Kirk that they're finally getting through to Starfleet.
Yeah, I think they pick up the distorted warning from the President.
Indeed, they watch in, I would say, shock, awe, as the President tells all ships not to approach the planet.
And explains about the probe and the damage that it is causing. He goes on to state that the only way to survive is to find a way to respond to this probe. Kirk turns and looks at his colleagues in stunned silence before getting Uhura to play the probe's transmission, and they hear a whistling, whining hum.
Before Spock makes a giant leap.
What's this?
He says that the probe signifies intelligent aliens who must be unaware of the signal's destructive nature.
And doesn't think that it is hostile. I'm sorry, I'm not having that. We cannot rely on your guesswork here.
Yeah, it's probably not hostile. That sounds nice.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
It made me think, obviously it's Whale Song that they play, but obviously the two great 80s music staples, Whale Song or Panpipes, it's gone the other way. It could have been a completely different movie.
Yeah. Enya.
Yeah.
McCoy understandably laughs at this supposition, but Spock goes one further and claims that the transmission may not even be targeted at humans and is aimed at the oceans. That again,
this is ridiculous. For a start, how does he know where it's aimed?
Yeah.
And secondly, why has he never come to this conclusion before?
This is quite weak writing.
Yeah, it's just let us get over this sort of little bump here and get into the main bit of the story.
Yeah. So, Uhura is asked to modify the signal, and what we hear is the high-pitched hum that would be heard underwater.
Yeah, she's mimicking an underwater effect. And Spock speculates, or at least he seems to know what's going on, and says that they cannot respond.
But he finds it fascinating.
Then he wanders off to test his theory.
Yeah.
Quickly followed, of course, by Kirk and McCoy, who want to know what's going on.
Is this the lab we go to next stuff?
Some kind of other room. I'm not sure what the Klingons have on their ships.
Spock seems to have proven his thesis and reveals to Kirk that the transmission is a song sung by humpback whales. Where did he get this from? Like, how would he know this?
His archive.
Okay. Even that, humpback whales.
Well, McCoy thinks this is stupid because who would send a probe right across the galaxy just to speak to the whales? However, Kirk and Spock point out to McCoy that whales predated human life.
Yeah, by millions of years. Spock goes on to point out that the humpback variety has been extinct since the 21st century, and therefore the probe may be investigating why the contact has been lost with them.
It's doing it in quite an aggressive way.
Yeah, just destroying everything.
Boil out the oceans.
Yeah.
Jeez, oh. Kirk wonders whether they can come up with some kind of mimicked response to the probe. But Spock says that they could do something that sounds like whale song, but it wouldn't mean anything.
No. So Kirk thinks the only option is to destroy the probe. However, Spock notes that it would be a futile endeavour, but does offer an alternative possibility. I mean,
he says that there's in theory a way to get some humpback whales, and McCoy realises what he means, but before he can take a step to the left and interject, Kirk calls for time warp calculations.
I mean, the only solution they can come up with is to go back in time. See, this is the thing. If
this would solve all their problems, though, they should be doing this every week.
Of course. And if they can go back in time, you don't necessarily need to go back in time to get whales. You can go back in time to destroy the probe or something.
Yeah.
There's other solutions.
Intercept to build a wall.
Yeah, anyway. Starfleet headquarters again. It is red alert chaos.
Oh, it's all going a bit mad.
We see both Rand and Chapel here,
Okay.
doing what they can along with everyone else. They're rushing about and screaming.
Indeed. There's a big window that needs kind of shored up.
Mm-hmm.
They're regretting that design decision right now. We'll sit on the bay with a big window. Nothing will ever come and bother us. Back on the ship, they're in the cargo bay now, and Kirk asks Scotty whether it can be enclosed to hold water.
Yeah, a confused Scotty.
Yes, he wants to know if it's for swimming.
He goes on to explain that they need it for humpbacks, which obviously doesn't really answer or doesn't ease the confusion.
No, McCoy is deeply sceptical still.
Yeah, he thinks it's a crazy plan, but Kirk asks him if he has a better idea. It's like, that's not really... So we'll go back in time and get some humpback whales. That sounds crazy. You got a better idea? That doesn't...
Literally anything is a better idea. He does refer back to the 2 previous episodes where they've done it before.
Yeah.
Up on the bridge, Spock tells Kirk that his computations are in progress, so Uhura is asked to get hold of Starfleet Command.
Yeah, Kirk gets himself put through to headquarters, and on the distorted screen he explains what they have discovered and what his plan is.
They're incredulous, and as they're about to tell him not to be so stupid, the signal cuts out.
Yeah, and the windows are blown in due to the weather. That's down in Starfleet.
Doesn't look like there's any chance of them getting in touch with him, so he's on his own. Should point out that back on the bridge now, the bridge is completely different to how it looked in the previous movie.
Yeah, they've
tidied it up a bit.
Yeah, of course.
The Vulcans, always working. Spock has completed his calculations by now and tells Kirk they're heading for the late 20th century, but he cannot be more precise because of the limits of the Bounty's equipment.
Although he does know they're going to the Pacific Basin.
Yes, and they're going back 300 years, and he's programming some of it from memory, which makes sense because I think they went back exactly 300 years in one of the previous episodes.
Okay. And so, they set off through the warps, hoping that the dilapidated vessel can handle it.
Indeed, I think Kirk says something like, "May fortune favour the foolish."
Okay. It looks ready to disintegrate as they reach 9.6. Parts start to break, but they do eventually manage to, I think, they catapult around the sun.
Slingshot!
Yay!
For a moment they're rendered unconscious, and you see Kirk kind of waking up hearing what is actually lines from later in the movie. So it's a time travel effect.
Ah, right, okay. Yeah, we get a weird scene of inside Kirk's mind.
Yeah. You hear Scotty saying things like, "Admiral, there be whales here," which he says in about an hour from now.
And it's mannequin type replicas of the gang.
Yeah.
I quite liked it.
Yeah. Eventually you get this image of a person falling through space, through Earth's atmosphere, and landing in a lake in a forest, and we hear like a ship landing.
Mm-hmm. They arrive at their destination. Kirk wakes first and calls on Sulu, who brings up Earth on the viewer, and Spock confirms that they have arrived where he expected.
Suitably polluted. It must be the 20th century Earth. He points out then that Earth of this time had tracking radars and so on, and they should probably cloak, so they do.
Quite convenient. What would have happened if they'd arrived there on the Enterprise?
Oh, they would have to hide behind the moon or something.
However, I do have an issue with the cloaking and how it's used on Earth. We'll talk about that when we get there.
There's a good shot as the ship crosses from day into night over there.
Yes. There are some nice visuals in this movie.
Yes, and none of the starship porn that they had in the earlier ones where it just spends ages going up the side of a ship. Spock closes them in on the west coast of North America, where Uhura manages to locate whale song, but not from the location they expected.
No, where is it?
Rather than the ocean, it's coming from the city of San Francisco itself.
This obviously confuses Kirk, and Scotty adds to his problems by telling him they have a serious issue.
Yeah, they can't get back because their dilithium crystals are fritzed.
And they have about 24 hours of cloaking left.
There you go, there's your time limit.
Yeah.
Start the clock.
Yep. Additionally, they won't even be able to break free of Earth's gravity.
Yes, so Spock thinks he's got a contemporary solution.
What's that?
The time period uses the phrase dubious flirtation.
Okay.
Had a dubious flirtation with nuclear fission reactors, and he thinks they could construct a device to draw power from one of those that would be enough to recrystallise their dilithium and get going again.
And they can obtain the necessary materials from naval vessels.
Indeed.
On the bridge, they watch as they approach San Francisco with a contentment about them as Kirk tells Sulu to land in the Golden Gate Park.
Yeah, I think they're all quite pleased that it doesn't look that different from the San Francisco that they know themselves.
Sure, I mean, I think you would experiencing this, if you go back in time, it would be fascinating. It'd be amazing. It'd be wondrous.
I'd enjoy that.
I would certainly.
Kirk breaks everybody up into teams. Uhura and Chekhov are in charge of the nuclear collection.
It's a little bit Scooby-Doo, isn't it?
Very much. McCoy is going to go with Sulu and Scotty to find materials to construct a whale tank. And Spock and Kirk are going to find the whales.
He then warns them all that the customs and people will take them by surprise. And they all stare at Spock. It's like, when we say this was directed, he didn't want to signal him out, but we're all going to look a little bit weird. And when I say all, I mean you with your big ears.
So he tears a piece off his robe. It's not as nice as when he had that hat on in the city of the edge of Forever.
Yeah, his little bonnet, his little wooden.
He should have. It would be great if he'd pulled it out of his pocket.
Yeah,
that'd have been a classic tribute. But he doesn't. He tears a bit off his robe and wears it as a headband,
like the Karate Kid, much to everyone's amusement.
Yeah, but it does cover his eyebrows and his ears.
Mm-hmm. He again warns them of the primitive culture they face.
And paranoid.
Yeah. Tells them to carry a weapon and communicator as they begin to land.
Yes, but they have to maintain radio silence unless there's an emergency.
We arrive at the Golden Gate Park and they land beside a couple of chattering bin men.
Yeah, one of them enjoys arguing with his wife and is refusing to buy her a $60 toaster.
Yes. They immediately, so after all this warning about, the cloaking devices and these people are different, they immediately just land and expose themselves. They've not even been there for a minute and they've made an arse of things.
Now, I don't understand how this cloaking works. I thought it was cloaking against radars and sensors. It seems to be cloaking against the naked eye as well. Mm-hmm. So that's quite convenient. Yeah,
it's like Harry Potter's invisibility.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really big.
Massive one, yeah. So it is, yeah. Extra. It's a industrial, I think they got it from the same supplier.
No doubt.
These bin men are, what do they call it in America?
Garbage
collectors, yeah. They run off, and as the gang head into the night, Kirk tells them to remember where they parked.
That's a good line.
It was a good line, yeah.
I think that's one of the more memorable ones from the movie.
Yeah.
Downtown San Francisco,
it's the next day.
Yeah, the whole crew are trying to adjust to the 1980s, and Kirk's almost run over by a taxi.
Yeah, this might have been my favourite scenes in the movie here. We get some great shots accompanied by fantastic 80s music of the team strolling through the city, and the double dumbass, as you mentioned, almost being knocked down by a cab outside Winchell's Donut House. Now, I don't know if it's just me or if any other people do this. Whenever I watch a movie or a TV show, especially ones from the 80s, for example, recently watching quite a bit of T.J. Hooker with the Shat, what I like to do is I sit in my house in Scotland and I go into Google Maps and I'll find out where it's been filmed, or if I can see a street name.
Yeah.
And then I'll do a street view and I'll look at, Venice Beach or parts of LA, or I'll do this all over in different parts of the country. And I'll put myself and I'll walk about.
I'm not saying you're understimulated,
but so I've seen this at Winchell's Donut House. I look up that as well. I like to look at if there's shops or restaurants or bars in the background. I'll freeze frame it and then I'll do a little bit of research.
Should you do that here?
Yeah, Winchell's Donut House, it still exists. I mean, there's a domain, but it's expired, and I think it was been taken over. I think they sold most of them to Krispy Kreme, yeah, I think. So it was a real place. As if anyone can tell us about Winchell's Donut House, was it any good? Was it better than Dunkin' Donuts?
How bad can a donut be?
I've never had a bad one, to be fair.
Well, I'm not a huge fan of the whole glazing trend that's going on these days.
No?
I prefer a sugar donut. Especially a freshly cooked sugared donut.
Warm?
Yeah.
They're all right. No, I do like a bit of glaze. I like one, actually. I prefer them that are not donuts, the ones without the holes, filled with like a custard or cream.
Or a jam.
I'd like a jam, yeah.
Or I suppose jelly if it's an American.
I mean, I could eat 12 donuts in about 10 minutes.
I think that's possibly true of everybody.
Yeah, you can buy the big the box of 12. I mean, I never have done it, but I could easily destroy a box like that in seconds.
Before I got sick, I was at Tim Hortons, which is obviously a Canadian chain, queuing to get a cup of coffee, and a couple of police officers pulled up, went in for their box of Timbits.
Oh, that's too...
It's so cliched.
I'd feel embarrassed doing it if I was a cop.
I know. It's like, you're walking into the donut shop, what are you doing?
Anyway,
yes, McCoy Crabbit as ever notes it's a miracle that these people ever got out of the 20th century because they drive cars. I'm not sure.
Or maybe, yeah, I don't know. Dangerous, perhaps? I don't know. Anyway, very conveniently, the main story on the San Francisco Register newspaper is about nuclear arms, but Spock and Kirk need to find some money to buy a copy.
Indeed, so they head off to an antique store.
And tell the others to act casual.
And break up, so they don't look like a gang.
Yeah. Kirk manages to get 100 quid.
Do you remember where he got those glasses?
Yeah, McCoy gave them.
At the start of Star Trek 2?
Yeah, because he was getting old and he couldn't use the...
This obviously creates a paradox, because now McCoy will buy them from whoever gets them from this guy.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Back out in the...
He gets $100 for them, so that's quite good.
I said that, yeah.
Yeah.
Back out in the street.
Yeah, Kirk's got change for his $100.
Like,
he's dishing it out between them. It's like at the start of some kind of like Cub Camp or something. It's like, here's all your coins.
Meet back here 1 hour.
Yeah.
Don't talk to strangers.
Don't spend it all in the first shot.
Watch when you're crossing the road.
He and Spock walk away discussing the whales, and Spock finds a city map on a pillar and starts to work out the coordinates for the museum or the...
Yeah, Kirk thinks he's found a shortcut.
Well, there's an ad on the bus for the Institute.
Yes, an Aquatic Research Institute. So they hop on, only to be swiftly ejected for not having the
exact change. They don't even know what that means.
No. We then witness McCoy, Scotty and Sulu looking for something that will help convert the cargo hold into a tank. And it looks like they may be in luck when they spot a building promoting the Yellow Pages. I found that building as well.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, Scotty says he would normally use transparent aluminium, or aluminum as he says it. But Sulu points out that that's not been invented yet.
Meanwhile, Uhura and the very heavily Russian accented Chekhov walk around 80s USA asking cops and other people how to get to the nuclear vessels.
Nuclear vessels. Yes, and seem surprised that nobody wants to tell the Russian guy where their nuclear weapons are.
That was quite fun.
I thought it was quite clever.
Kirk and Spock are now on the bus, heading to the Institute, but they and the other passengers are being disturbed by a very obnoxious punk. Do you have any trivia for this punk?
I know the trivia about the punk, but I didn't write it down because I didn't think it was that interesting.
Very interesting.
You tell me the truth.
No, I can't remember. I didn't write it down either. I expected you to.
I think I remember the crew.
Yeah.
And it's based on a real life experience that Leonard Nimoy had with an actual punk.
No, but I think this, I'm sure, I could be wrong, is this punk not one of the creators of the different puppets that they've used, different creatures, and he went on to work in Henson and all that. So I think he's quite a big puppet guy.
Yeah, he certainly wasn't an actor. He was, I think he lobbied for the role as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, Spock takes him out with a nerve pinch, much to the delight of the rest of the bus.
Yes, before he goes on to ask Kirk about the language of the day.
Don't you remember, Jim? What's your question?
Your use of language has altered since our arrival. It is currently laced with, shall I say, more colorful metaphors. Double dumbass on you, and so forth.
You mean the profanity?
Yes.
That's simply the way they talk here. Nobody pays any attention to you unless you swear every other word. You'll find it in all the literature of the period.
For example?
All the collected works of Jacqueline Suzanne. The novels are Harold Robbins.
Ah. The Giants.
What can you tell me about Harold Robbins?
Well, I've not read any of his stuff, but I think he was very successful, but not very well regarded by the literati.
We've discussed him before.
Fawlty Towers.
Yes, in the episode Waldorf Salad, Basil calls his work transatlantic tripe.
Yeah. And the other person mentioned there, I think she wrote...
I think she romance novels.
The Valley of the Dolls and things like that, which, yeah.
Trash. Pulp.
Yeah, but popular.
Yeah.
It's easy to dismiss it.
I've never read any of it. I'm being very dismissive without really knowing, so it's very wrong of me.
I'm sure it's just a good bit of lightweight fun.
I'm sure. And she's obviously been successful, so...
Anyway.
They get to this Cetacean? How do you pronounce this word? Cetacean?
I've referred to it as the Institute. You pronounce it however you want, Ian. It's fine.
I've not got this in my trivia, so I'll mention it now that I remember. In Next Generation and Future, there's actually a department on the Enterprise, Cetacean department where the whale officers work.
All right, okay. They arrive here 5 minutes before a showing of the wonderful world of whales and are met by the assistant director, who apparently is also a tour guide named Jillian. I'm sure the assistant director of an institute doesn't do the tours.
Well, she wants to. She enjoys telling people about whales.
Surely she's got other things to be doing.
Nah, they're leaving anyway.
She gets straight into it. There's no messing about.
No, and she agrees with Kirk's interruption that mankind is the biggest threat to the whales.
Spock notes that hunting to extinction is not logical, and this seems to impress her and maybe quite excite her.
Yeah, she says that no one ever said humans were logical. We see the outside of the whale tank where she introduces George and Gracie. Do you know what the names are a reference to?
Yeah, George Burns and Gracie Allen.
Is it?
Yeah, I think they were a double act.
Oh, okay.
You know George Burns, yeah?
Is he the guy with the krypton factor?
Gordon Burns, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
That'd be quite good. George Burns to the krypton factor. Yeah, no, you've seen George Burns. He's dead now, but he was like at the end of his career. Obviously, he was like one of these a really old guy with a massive, not Milton Berle, with a massive cigar, and he was in like 18 again, I think.
Okay,
things like that. Yeah.
Anyhow, Kirk notes to Spock that a male and female whale together in a contained space is ideal for what they need, which must sound really dodgy to anyone who hears him.
Yes.
They go down inside the institute, and Jillian says that the whales are being returned to the ocean because they can't afford to keep feeding them.
Yeah, we think that's a joke, obviously. Understandably, she's became quite attached to them, so it's a personal connection here.
Indeed.
And also, if it's a whale institute, what does she do if they don't have any whales?
Just talks in theory about whales. The tour group now gets to view the whales through an underwater window and hear the songs of the whales,
which Jillian explains is a message from the male, although they're not entirely sure what its purpose is. One of the crowd asks if it's singing to that man, which is Spock, who's in the tank mind-melding one of the whales. Yeah, it's an iconic image. Either that or he's interfering. Yeah, well, he's got his hand on her head like he would if he was doing a mind meld. Like okay, that's just crazy. Anyway, outside, a rightly enraged Jillian runs to the top with Kirk to confront Spock, who says he was merely trying to communicate with him. That's not what he says. He says he was attempting the hell to communicate. You get the police called at this point, don't you? You would think so. Yeah, she wants to call the police for people interfering with her whales, but Spock tells her that although the whales like her very much, they are not the hell her whales. And we cut to Spock and Kirk walking along the side of the road, having clearly been ejected from the Institute. Kirk is giving Spock some advice about not using the colourful metaphors any longer. It's like sometimes you hear that there's a certain type of person that can't swear. Yes, it doesn't fit their natural sort of rhythm. You often get it with sort of posh people who throw in a swear word here and there, and you think, we're fortunate with our accents that all swearing sounds fine and natural. Yeah, I mean, I think Scottish and Irish accents are just naturally you can sweary. Yeah, very sweary. Not on this podcast, family podcast. Not on this podcast, but you should hear us off mic. Well, you could imagine F's, C's, and B's left, right, and centre. You have to edit them out every week. I do, like this. Ian, you're a yeah, exactly. Harsh when I'm sick as well. Spock says that while he's fine with cutting out the colourful metaphors, he would struggle with the lying that Kirk wants him to do. So Kirk presents it in a different way. What's that? He says, you don't need to lie, just exaggerate. He goes on to inform Kirk that his communications with the whales revealed that they are unhappy with man, but he thinks that they're up for helping them. That's quite good. Yeah. It would be really terrible if they weren't. Spock says, yes, he was successful in communicating what it is they want to do. Back in the Institute, a downbeat Jillian chats with Bob, a colleague, who sympathises with her about the predicament they're in with the whales, though he does make a big mistake by saying that, well, they're not humans, and we don't really know how intelligent they are. Yeah, it's alright, you kick a cat, it's fine, it's not as bad as racism. It's like, how can you not read the... Obviously he knows how she feels about them. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, they're only animals. So people try and put these things in different... You don't have to compare things. No. At the naval base now, we've got Chekhov. He reports to Kirk that they have found the nuclear ship, and it happens to be called... It's the Enterprise. Yay! Although it's not actually the Enterprise. The real Enterprise was out on, whatever you call it, procedures. Okay. And they used a different ship and pretended. Right. Their plan is to beam in that night, steal the photons or whatever it is, which he thinks should be a dodo, And this is approved by Kirk, yeah, fair.
Yep.
Fine.
He says to keep me informed, and then they see Jillian curb crawling.
Yes. Yeah, very coincidentally, Kirk and Spock are then approached by her in her truck. Again, why is she driving a truck?
She's a whale person.
You can't put wheels in the back of a
little
truck.
bit country.
You can't. You don't need a truck. Who for some reason is not scared by them, and in fact offers them a lift even after Kirk mentions that Spock did too much LDS in the 60s.
Mormons.
So these are the scenes that I think, it's the humour's there, but it doesn't detract from the overall enjoyment. I don't think it makes fun of the
it doesn't
show.
take you out of the story. Yeah.
No.
In this, the cab of this truck or pickup or whatever you would call it, they are talking about the whales, with Kirk keen to know when they're going to be released back into the wild.
Yeah, and there is another sort of comical little back and forth between them, between the three of them.
Yes, and Jillian says that when they're released, they'll need to take their chances and could be at risk from hunters.
Mm. And then she makes an incredible deduction by asking what Spock meant when he said that they would be as guilty as those who caused their extinction. Now this is garbage. Spock has spoken in past tense, caused.
Yes.
And she's picked up on this, rather than just being grammatically incorrect.
Well, I suppose it might be egregious when she heard it. It's like, why is he talking about them that they're already extinct?
No, because she's making the leap here they're from the future. Or this is...
No, she doesn't think they're actually from the future. She thinks there's something weird about them.
Yeah, I know, but what else you meant to... I don't understand this. It's not...
Kirk has to reassure her at this point that he's not involved with teaching whales to retrieve torpedoes or dipshit stuff like that.
She screeches to a halt though when Spock states that Gracie is pregnant. I wonder if he's the father.
The delivery's quite... I'm very Savick. The delivery's quite wonderful.
Yeah.
This line. It's just they're just sitting there and it's like, Gracie's pregnant.
And she demands to know how they know that and who they really are.
Kirk says he can't tell her, but if she gives them a chance, he promises that they're not in the military and they have no harmful intentions towards the whales and may be able to help her in ways that she cannot even imagine.
Yeah, I'd be very dubious about this.
Well, she is very dubious about this.
Especially when he suggests discussing it over dinner.
Yes, we're at the top of the show, the exchange about Italian food.
Yeah.
And although Spock says yes, I don't think he's going to go.
No. Plexicorp. Or Core. Plexicorp.
Yeah. Scotty and McCoy have finagled their way onto a tour by pretending to be a visiting Scottish professor and his associate who had arranged in advance but been forgotten by the company.
Meanwhile, Sulu is chatting up the helicopter pilot outside.
He is.
I'm sure... why does Plexicorp, a plastics company, have a helicopter on standby?
Oh, they're a big company.
Okay. And they need to have a helicopter.
I think there's a plexiglass emergency.
Okay.
After the tour inside is finished, Scotty tells this Dr. Nichols that he has a fine plant, and in return Nichols compliments how impressive Scotty's engineering skills are.
Scotty then amazes him.
Yes, well, first of all, he notes that he's still working with polymers, which confuses him because what else would he be doing?
It's the most up-to-date technology they have.
And they have this discussion about how thick a piece of this stuff would need to be to hold the amount of water they would need. He's told, I know that, 6 inches. And Scotty says, what if it only had to be 1 inch? It sounds like one of these salesmen. It's like, I have a Hoover that can suck up all the dirt.
Now, Nichols obviously thinks this is ludicrous, so Scotty apparently proves it by getting onto the computer.
Yeah, it's a old Apple Mac, or at that point a new Apple Mac.
Yeah.
Although it's not really, because it's just the shell of an Apple Mac with a PC inside.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Anyhow, he can't work out the mouse at all, so he's given the keyboard and produces some wizardry.
And this shows off the molecular design that would revolutionise his industry, Nichols' industry, transparent aluminium.
Yes, and McCoy indicates to him that he'll be richer than he can possibly imagine.
He greedily agrees to trade Plexi for the formula. Although this is after McCoy is happily accepts Scotty's disclaimer that the man might have invented the formula and therefore history won't be altered. He doesn't believe this at all. It's like, yeah,
it's garbage.
Tell me what you want. Okay, what do yeah, okay.
Justify this? That's fine.
That's fine, yep. Tick, box, ticked.
Over in the park, Jillian and Kirk drop Spock off, and he says that he knew Gracie was pregnant because Gracie knew. And then she says, "Are you just going to stand here while we eat?" And Kirk says that's his way.
Yeah, he's going to hang around the bushes.
They make Spock sound like a weirdo.
Like a pest, yeah. A guy who has been touching up her whales is now hanging around a public park at night on his own.
Yeah.
Okay.
Creep.
They drive off, and he doesn't even let them get out of sight before he vanishes onto the spaceship.
Yeah.
I mean, give it 5 minutes.
Bold.
There's no need for that.
No. Taking a risk.
Any good driver will be checking their mirrors behind as they move off from
You would
anywhere.
think, yeah. Anyway.
Especially if you've left someone, just to make sure they're okay.
They got away with it.
At the restaurant.
Funny story about the restaurant.
Go for it.
The restaurant that they filmed this in didn't have a pizza oven.
Right.
So they bought a pizza oven and gave it to the restaurant. The restaurant was allowed to keep this pizza oven, and it only appears for about 3 seconds of the movie.
Okay. She orders a pizza and beer.
Yeah.
Kirk has the same before she laughs at his suggestion that he could take the whales to a place of safety.
Yeah, she notes that they are tagged with radio transmitters to keep track of them after they're released, and then asks him why he hangs around with the ditzy guy who knows that Gracie's pregnant and calls him Admiral.
But when she doesn't get an answer from him, she returns to the question about the safety of her whales.
She does.
But they're interrupted
by this Klingon communicator beeping,
which causes her to ask again who he is and what his story is.
She refers to this device as a pager, asking him if he's a doctor, but he finally has to answer the call and tells whoever on the other end, I think it's Scotty, that he is busy. But Scotty says he's going to beam Chekhov and Uhura onto the Enterprise now. Kirk gives them their orders, kills the transmission. Now that's obviously a bit sus for Jillian.
Yeah, so he eventually decides to tell her the truth.
I am from what on your calendar would be the late 23rd century. I've come back in time to bring 2 humpback whales with me in an attempt to repopulate the species.
Well, why didn't you just say so? I mean, why all the coy disguises?
You want the details?
Oh, I wouldn't miss this for all the tea in China.
When are those whales being released?
Okay. What the hell? Your friend was right. Gracie's not only pregnant, she is very pregnant. And at noon tomorrow, in what is sure to be a media circus, the whales get shipped out.
Noon tomorrow?
Are we leaving?
Come on. We don't have much time.
Could we have that to go, please?
Sure. Who gets the bad news?
Don't tell me they don't use money in the 23rd century.
Well, we don't.
Just before that clip, she asks him if he's from outer space. He says no, he's from Iowa, he just works in outer space. Which I thought was quite a good
nice
little line. Anyway, they head off and we go over to the USS Enterprise reactor room where Uhura and Chekhov are getting themselves organised while trying to stay hidden.
Yes, from a garden dog before approaching the reactor in order to steal the stuff.
Yeah, the nuclear
thing. Back at the park.
Jillian tells Kirk that this was the briefest dinner she's ever had and makes it clear that she doesn't believe any part of his story.
No, a cockamamie. I like that word, cockamamie. Or cockamamie. Is it Mamie or Mamie? Cockamamie?
Mamie.
Mamie, yeah. I don't know what Mamie is. I know what... Never mind.
She refuses to tell him the whale's radio transmitter frequency, saying it's classified information, and he explains to her that if he has to go to the open sea to get whales, he will, but he'd much rather have hers because it would be better for them, it would be better for her, and it would be easier for him.
Yeah. And he's not going to show her around the spaceship.
No. But if she changes her mind about helping, he'll be right here.
He gets out the truck.
He does.
Pleads with her to think about it, as he is almost out of time. And as she drives away, she detects a flash and turns back to see that he has vanished.
Yeah, and she drives away puzzled. On the ship, Spock confirms that the cargo bay water tank is going to be ready by the morning, which Kirk notes is cutting it finer than they realise.
However, worryingly, they haven't heard from Chekhov and Uhura yet.
Yes, we see them anxiously watching the progress on their little device as a patrol passes and the control room of the Enterprise notes the drop in energy.
Yeah. Kirk also goes on this is interesting, a sort of mini rant when Spock refers to what they're doing as their mission. This riles him as it somewhat underplays the seriousness of what they're doing.
It does.
Well, he's still going out for pizza and beers.
Well, that's right. He's on a date though.
There's always time for a date with a potential victim. Girlfriend.
Uhura now gets in touch with the ship, saying that they're ready to beam out. Just as the base commander notes there is an intruder in that section. Scotty finally responds, noting that he's low on power. That's convenient. Has to beam them back one at a time.
Uhura goes first with the photon collector. However, before Chekhov can be taken, he is surrounded by military pointing guns at him.
And Scotty loses his signal completely. And he's taken to an interrogation room.
Yeah, he's been questioned by this interrogator. He reads out his ID, which identifies him as commander of the United Federation of Planets.
Yeah, it's his Starfleet ID.
He's asked what he's doing and what the communicator and phaser are, but things escalate quickly as he is called a Rusky retard. So a little bit dated language here.
Yeah. While they are distracted arguing about that language, he grabs his phaser and they laugh at him.
He attempts to stun one of the guards, but it malfunctions. So instead, he throws it at him, makes a run for it, which results in a chase sequence with Chekhov ultimately falling to an unconscious landing.
Quite a comical fall. He gets to the edge and then topples off sideways.
Yeah, it was a comical fall, but
serious consequences.
Yes. Back up in the Klingon ship, Uhura can't find Chekhov and is sorry that she left him, but Kirk doesn't blame her and tells her to keep trying to locate him.
Yes, Scotty's got bad news though, because the crystals are taking a lot longer to re-energise, and it could be well into tomorrow before they're ready to go.
Kirk has a go and he promises he'll do better.
But then calls Kirk a wee bit of a snit.
Yeah.
Spock responds that he's a deeply emotional man.
I'm not sure what a snit is, not a word I've ever used.
No.
I mean, you can put that in context, but...
Yeah. He's being snippy, I guess.
Back at the Institute, Jillian returns and is devastated to find that the whales were removed last night behind her back, and then slaps Bob for his betrayal as she storms off. Bob's a bit of a dick.
Yeah, this slap wasn't in the script, and the actor who received it wasn't expecting it and wasn't pleased about it, but apparently stayed in character long enough that they were able to use the take.
Good. Well done, Jillian.
Anyhow, yes, she gets back to her truck and speeds off to Golden Gate Park.
Yeah, she seems to have come up with a decision, because at first she slumps down and bangs her head in the steering wheel as if she's given up, but then you can see she's got a plan, yeah.
She arrives at the park just in time to expose the idiocy of the plan that is in place.
Yeah, okay, so let's start at the beginning of this. Yeah, we've got a nice shot of Sulu piloting a helicopter. Now, I've got an issue with this.
Because they didn't show you how he got the helicopter?
No, he didn't. How can he fly a helicopter? He's entirely... No,
he talks to you when he was seducing the pilot. He was explaining to him that he'd flown them when he was younger.
Did he?
Yeah.
But no, why would he have flown a helicopter from 300 years ago?
For fun.
No. And he's a starship. The starship is like a plane. They're entirely... A plane pilot just now could not fly a helicopter unless he's been trained. It's entirely different skills.
It's a well-known Star Trek trope that these people are very intuitive when it comes to using, except for Kirk's driving.
Yeah, exactly. Helicopters are very, very hard to operate.
He's clearly doing it just fine. But visibly, and Jillian can see him, and the plexiglass that he's dropping into the Klingon bird of prey.
Yeah, he's hovering just as Jillian arrives, screaming for Kirk, and she is astonished to see what looks like his floating torso.
What, Scotty's floating torso?
Receive the cargo.
Scotty sees her and lets Kirk know that they might have a problem.
She runs over, but is sent onto her backside when she collides with the invisible ship. And this is, we mentioned earlier, a massive problem with this. You can't... This is a public park.
Yeah, and nobody else has walked into any of the ship's legs.
There's been no dogs, no people playing frisbee or throwing a ball around.
They could have had a very humorous scene with a dog peeing on one of the invisible legs.
Yes, they should have, yeah. Or just someone you bang into.
As if it's visible to dogs. That'd be a good joke.
Or the dog can sense it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, dogs can sense. Apparently, the movies I watch, they can sense out ghosts and all sorts
and stuff. Yeah, that's bears.
Yeah, I was going with the ghost thing, but if you want to go down that route, that's...
It's a line from Anchorman.
Yeah, anyway.
Yes, so Kirk decides the only solution is to beam Jillian up, which he does. And when she arrives, he welcomes her with, "Hello, Alice. Welcome to Wonderland."
Now, I think this must be is it the third reference to Alice in Wonderland we've had in Star Trek?
At least, and there's more to come. Like Discovery uses it all sorts of times. It gets used.
Yeah, okay. She's a bit discombobulated.
Just a little bit, but is amazed to learn that everything she's been told is true.
Yeah, she's not displeased.
She recalibrates, I think.
Yeah, especially after he shows her the storage tanks for the whales, but she reveals to him they're gone, and by this point we'll be in Alaska.
Yeah, she fails to point out that he doesn't have any food for them.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it?
Anyhow.
And she also points out that they have been tagged, and to surprise it, Kirk doesn't think it is a simple job to take the spaceship over there. So she's thinking, wait, get a spaceship, what's the problem?
Yeah, Kirk says they can't go anywhere just yet because it's the kind of ship that has a man missing.
Even though Spock updates him that they now have full power, so he's putting Chekhov before the... See, this is not a good decision. As he earlier alluded to...
The whole thing. Well, yes and no. There's not really a time crunch in terms of getting back because it's time travel. They're always going to get back at the same time. That's
a good point, yeah.
It's just a case of, can they get these whales, or are they going to have to find another plan for the whales?
Yeah, okay.
Anyhow, yes, Spock greets Jillian, welcomes her aboard, and she kind of just nods back, having finally been exposed to his eyes and ears.
Ahura comes through with the news that Chekhov is being taken to emergency surgery and that his condition is critical and, in fact, unlikely to survive.
Indeed, and McCoy is apoplectic. He's desperate for the opportunity to go and save his friend.
Yeah, rather than... Well, he wants to get involved rather than leave him to 20th century medicine. A view that's supported by Spock. I mean, they probably don't want him to have leeches. And
this is a bit of a turn for Spock, isn't it?
Brain drilling holes in your brain to...
This is a very human response from Spock, saying that we should save our friend.
Yeah, let the evil spirits out.
Well, it works for some people. Kirk questions Spock's position on this, but he concedes that although it's not logical, it is the human thing to do, and Kirk asks Jillian for her help as well.
Which she agrees to. So, we go to the hospital.
Nice set piece here in the hospital.
Tell me about it, yeah?
Well, it starts off with McCoy and Kirk, are they wheeling Jillian on a gurney at this point?
Well, they get in there and then they put her onto one, yeah.
On the way there, McCoy gives a pill to a woman who's on kidney dialysis to help her grow a new kidney.
Yeah.
Which I mentioned in a previous episode because he complains about kidney damage at some point in a previous episode.
Okay.
When he used to take one of these pills.
Ah, right.
Anyhow, he mutters to himself about this being the Dark Ages and tells her to let him know if there's any problem.
They all meet up again and have discovered that Chekhov is one flight up, and so they commandeer a gurney. Yes, is the point.
Yeah, that's where they get her on the gurney, and they cover it up and they head for the elevator,
the non-turbo lift, where McCoy doesn't like the chatter amongst a couple of doctors sharing the ride.
No, it's all sort of primitive stuff, isn't it?
Well, I think they're talking about, is it women? I don't know, or people. I'm not sure what they're talking about.
It's like
lad humour or lad nonsense.
Nonsense.
On the first floor, Jillian is acting like the patient, which allows them to pass police security into the operating room.
See, who are these? I assume this was military because he'd been captured on the base.
Yeah, military police.
Yeah, but for some reason they let them in with another patient to the operating room where they know there's already a patient.
Yeah.
I think they're just kind of caught up by the whole speed of how things happen here.
The surgeons
McCoy's yelling.
Yeah, I mean, and the surgeons are obviously, they're perturbed about who they are, especially when McCoy starts scanning him.
Yes, they want to know what's going on and why they're interfering. And they have a debate and asks McCoy if his degree is in dentistry, which upsets McCoy.
So, Kirk is forced to lock the real doctors in another room to allow McCoy to place a device on Chekhov's forehead.
Yes, Chekhov comes round and is able to give Kirk his name and rank, so they head out with Chekhov now on the stretcher and Jillian on foot.
And these police are not entirely stupid because they soon realise that they went in with a woman patient and have come out with a man, and so they rush in to see what's happened. Shouldn't they have stopped? One could have run in to see what's happened and the other could have told them.
Well, they start running. Kirk says one little mistake and they head off.
Yeah, we have a jaunty chase through the hospital. This reminded me a little bit of, have you seen the Steven Seagal movie with Kelly LeBrock, Hard to Kill?
No.
Mason Storm.
Okay.
Steven Seagal's been in a coma for like 7 years. But then bad guys, because the bad guys thought they'd killed him. But then they find out he was alive all this time. But fortunately, they find out just at the same time where he comes out of his coma. But he can't walk. He's been in a coma for 7 years.
Yeah.
So Kelly LeBrock, who was his real life wife at the time, she's playing a nurse who's been looking after him all this time. And he manages to tell her, people are coming for me, and she sort of pushes him in a gurney or a bed throughout the hospital as bad guys are shooting and killing people.
And by the end of the chase, is he back on his feet?
Not quite, no, but after a few months, there's a montage of him getting his strength back and all that sort of stuff. He's a ridiculous character, so he is. But his movies can be quite amusing. As
this chase goes on, they pass the woman who got the kidney pill, and she's astounded all the doctors by growing a new kidney in the time it took us to attend to Chekhov.
They eventually get beamed back to the park.
While they're in the lift, yeah.
So, Jillian is not happy to hear Kirk can't take her with them, as they'll be going to the 23rd century, and demands to go along, as that's where the whales are. But
she eventually concedes the position and tells Kirk the frequency for finding the whales.
I mean, she's willing to give up her... I mean, does she have no family or friends at all?
The whales?
I know she likes the whales, but I mean, come on.
She only likes whales.
Yeah. The outlaw.
Yeah.
Josie. Anyway.
Kirk tries to beam himself up.
That was the nickname of... the outlaw was the nickname of the snooker player from the sort of 90s, 2000.
Which one?
Joe Swales.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Kirk thanks Jillian for everything, and then, I think for the only time in Star Trek, tells Scotty to beam him up.
That was really lazy. He's right beside he doesn't need beamed up to the ship. You just walk up the stairs.
Yeah, well, it's quicker just to beam into the bridge.
That must use a lot of power and things like that.
Yeah, it seems crazy, yeah. But there's a twist.
Yes, what happens?
Just as he's about to disappear, she grabs hold of him.
And is therefore brought aboard with him. I've got an issue with this.
How does she even know it would work that way? Because normally you've got a pattern.
For all she knows that it can only be one person at a time, and if you overload it, you all die.
Yeah. Anyhow.
On the bridge, Kirk seems to have forgotten that he said no, as he allows her just to stay, and they blast off, causing confusion amongst some joggers.
Yeah, I like how he asked Spock how long he needed, and Spock says 1 damn minute. Yes, Sulu reacquaints himself with the controls, having had his shot on the Hui.
Well, I think Kirk also tries to show off in front of her. He gives all these orders to Sulu that he never has to, because it's Sulu's job. All he has to say is like, warp 5 and tell like, he just tells him where we're going.
Yeah.
And Sulu does it, but he's like, yeah, give it this and that, and 3 degrees left.
I'm the boss. Yeah. Yes, as you say, the joggers are quite surprised by the invisible ship leaving as they head for Alaska and start scanning for whales.
Yeah, Scotty, he confirms at this point that the tanks are secure, although he's never beamed up 400 tons before. This is also obviously including the water, yeah. Uhura remains true to form and reports that she can't make contact as we get a quick external shot outside. This reminds me very much of the opening sequence of Quantum Leap.
Okay. Yeah, with the sort of...
through the clouds and the...
And then we get I think it's a bit later when we see a shot of a boat that reminds me of Jaws.
Right, yeah. Before McCoy seems to take pleasure in a concern that Spock has.
You present the appearance of a man with a problem.
Your perception is correct, Doctor. In order to return us to the exact moment we left the 23rd century, I have used our journey back through time as a referent, calculating the coefficient of elapsed time in relation to the acceleration curve.
Naturally. So what's your problem?
Acceleration is no longer a constant.
Well, then you're just going to have to take your best shot.
Best shot?
Yes, Spock. Your best guess.
Guessing is not in my nature, Doctor.
Well, nobody's perfect.
Uhura finally manages to detect the whales, and so Kirk has them put on the screen.
To Jillian's amazement.
But Uhura has another signal that is closing in on them. And what do we discover it as?
It's whalers.
Oof.
With their harpoon.
On the sea, this whaling ship is ready to take a shot, but they swoop down to intercept this harpoon and terrify the fishermen by decloaking, causing them to run away.
Indeed. Scotty then beams the whales and water on board, and we get that line that we heard earlier of Admiral, there be whales here. And he confirms that full warp power is available. There's literally no problems. Completely different to any other time that he's been asked.
Yeah, so they head off at warp speed.
Kirk's going to now take Jillian down to see the whales, but first he has to speak to Spock about the time calculations.
And yes, and as amused to hear that, he's going to make a guess.
I'm not sure amused is the right word.
Well,
but after he leaves with Jillian, McCoy reassures Spock that Kirk just means he feels better about Spock's guesses than anybody else's calculations.
Yeah. Down in the cargo, the tank area, Jillian beams at the captive whales as Kirk impresses her by quoting D.H. Lawrence.
Didn't she recognise the quote?
But before he can make a move, Scotty butts in and talks about the beasties being pleased to see them. He's such a cockblock.
Yeah, well, it's better than what he usually does around women.
Yeah, that's true. If I'm not having her, no one else is.
Jillian calls this a miracle, but Scotty says the miracle is still to come, and at this point, Kirk mentions they might die.
This is what I wanted to mention. Now, fair enough, she has jumped into his arms and came aboard, but he could easily have beamed her back off.
He's respecting her agency.
No, I'm sorry, that's not... She did not have the information at hand to make this decision responsibly. So he knows that they all might die. She's jumped on thinking she's coming for a quick trip. He had, at the very least, to say, this is really risky, there's a very good chance we're going to die. Make a decision. But in fact,
he reiterates her decision
he shouldn't even have allowed her to... She should have been beamed straight back off.
Yeah, too late now.
Anyway, she claims that she belongs with the whales and will be the only expert in the 23rd century.
It's a point that Kirk has to concede.
How does she know this? She doesn't know what they know in the 23rd century. Maybe they're historians.
Well, maybe, but that would be a very niche historian.
Yeah, but you don't know. Come on, that technology, you could have... you could absorb the entire knowledge of humanity by that point into
Sam Neill, like the dinosaur expert.
Yeah.
Anyhow, Scotty reports a power fall off as Kirk tells Jillian to stay with the whales and heads to the bridge.
Yeah, I think he sort of tells the lassie to hold on tight.
Yeah, you stay safe down here.
He says that to all his victims.
Stop saying victims. It's like the third time in this movie.
What? Well, Scotty does have a lot of victims of the female...
You're talking about Kirk?
No, I'm talking about Scotty saying, hold on tight, lassie. He says that to all his victims.
Right, okay. Up on the bridge, they're at high warp approaching the sun, but Scotty reports that warp 7.9 is the best they can do. Oh, he was wrong when he said they had all the power available.
Anyway, they're going to compensate for this by altering the trajectory of... I don't know.
Spock's recalculating based on the speed they can get.
Yeah, whatever. Sometime later, it seems to have worked as we return to a confused-looking Kirk who is told the thrusters did indeed fire.
Yeah, they've returned to somewhere, but they don't know where or when, and they don't have any sensors, and they appear to be crashing.
Yeah, lights dim and we again hear the pulsing of the probe signifying that they're back in their own time.
Yes, and we jump to Starfleet Command pretty much at the moment we left them earlier in the film.
Yeah, they watch in horror as they see the ship head for the Golden Gate Bridge. Fortunately, they miss it.
Very fortunate if they can't see what they're doing.
But crash land on the water, and Kirk realises that they are in the correct place, but they must release the whales before they sink. I'm not sure he understands how whales work.
Yeah, but if they're trapped in the ship, they won't be able to survive.
Why not? If they're trapped, they might be trapped there until they can get something down there to release them. They won't drown.
They will drown, they're mammals.
Can they not stand underwater?
Whales can't breathe underwater.
For how long?
I don't know, but they breathe air.
Yeah, but they can do it for a while, surely.
Yeah, but not
hours.
You don't know how long it's going to be.
Hours.
I don't know, but it's not indefinite.
Well,
did you forget that whales breathed air?
I don't know about this. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, if they're in the sea, they'll be all right.
I'm thinking at this point, Starfleet Command must have no idea whether they've been back in time or not.
Yes.
As far as they've concerned, they've just heard from Kirk saying we're going to go back in time. Then he lands in front of them,
just like Einstein arriving in the DeLorean.
Sure. Anyhow, Kirk tells the folk on the bridge that they've landed in the water and they need to let the whales out, as you said. Everybody else has to abandon ship, and he himself is going to be the hero.
What's he going to do?
He's going to free Scotty and Jillian and then free the whales.
It's really Jillian he wants to free.
Well, he frees her first.
Yeah. He finds Scotty and Jillian up to their chests in water behind a trap door, which he manages to open.
Yes, and they leave back up through the ship as he tries to open the external cargo bay doors to release the whales.
This was quite fun. You see Jillian actually taking the lead and helping Scotty out like an old hunched up man.
A wee old man,
yeah.
Kirk, despite Scotty's overstated concern that he could be trapped, is easily able to open the doors, and he and the whales escape through them.
Yeah, Kirk meets up with the others standing outside on the ship.
Uhura and Jillian spot the whales as Kirk wonders why they're not responding to the probe.
Eventually they do, and the probe stops probing, packs up and goes home.
It does, and the weather calms down a bit and power is restored to Starfleet Command.
And they all slap themselves in the back for a job well done and start splashing around. It must be freezing in there.
Frolicking. They literally start
You can't do that,
frolicking.
and I mean, I've not been to the... but that's the water, I think, surely, where Alcatraz is.
Yeah, that sort of area.
Now, we know for a fact, I've watched plenty of movies and documentaries on Alcatraz. It's near enough impossible to get across that. That water will kill you. It's cold.
Yeah, well, they're still kind of in the vicinity of their ship, and they know they'll get beamed out.
Yeah, I still wouldn't be splashing about as if I'm on the beach.
Yeah, maybe not.
And we head back to the Starfleet Council. Kirk and his fellow accused crew stand before the President to hear what their judgment is to be. And even although Spock has nothing to answer for, he decides to show solidarity.
The charges and specifications are conspiracy, assault on Federation officers, theft of Federation property, namely the Starship Enterprise, sabotage of the USS Excelsior, willful destruction of Federation property, specifically the aforementioned USS Enterprise, and finally, disobeying direct orders of the Starfleet commander. Admiral Kirk, how do you plead?
On behalf of all of us, Mr. President, I'm authorized to plead guilty.
So ended. Because of certain mitigating circumstances, all charges but one are summarily dismissed. The remaining charge, disobeying orders of a superior officer, is directed solely at Admiral Kirk. I'm sure the Admiral will recognize the necessity of keeping discipline in any chain of command.
I do, sir.
James T. Kirk, it is the judgment of this council that you be reduced in rank to captain, and that as a consequence of your new rank, you be given the duties for which you have repeatedly demonstrated unswerving ability, the command of a starship. Silence. Captain Kirk, you and your crew have saved this planet from its own short-sightedness, and we are forever in your debt.
So we have the typical Hollywood ending with everyone applauding and cheering.
And Kirk getting dumped.
Yes. Yeah, as the crowd disperse, Jillian goes over to Kirk and thanks him and tells him she has a position in a science vessel. And he gets a little bit creepy here. He says, how will I find you? And she bats him away, saying,
Don't call me, I'll call you.
Don't worry, I'll find you. Yeah, sure. Before kissing his cheek and leaving,
friend-zoned.
Yeah, totally. He brought her aboard, knowing it was a massive risk to her life, thinking, well, you're getting banged.
Didn't happen.
Nope. That's what you get, Kirk.
Yeah. Spock then speaks with his father, who finally concedes that his son may not have been in error when he joined Starfleet.
It's a very un-Vulcan-like moment of tenderness.
It is. It's a good conclusion to their arc. Spock thanks his father for coming and asks him to tell his mother that he feels fine.
They then give the old Vulcan hand sign, wish each other to live long and prosper, and he departs.
He does. And then we're on a shuttle to the new ship that Kirk has been given command of.
McCoy is moaning as usual.
He thinks it'll just be an industrial freighter of some kind, and Sulu hopes it'll be the Excelsior, but Kirk tells them, no, we've come home.
And when it comes into view, they're amazed and delighted to see that it is a new version of the Enterprise.
NCC 1701A.
So explain this to me. Is this a refurb or is this a
new ship?
A completely new ship?
A new letter means a new ship.
Right.
So the refurb was the one that we saw in Star Trek 2.
Okay.
Or Star Trek, the first motion picture was a refurb. But this movie came out around about the same time as The Next Generation started, and it had the Enterprise D. So that kind of gave you the continuity for that.
Okay. And finally, we're on the bridge where they take their positions and blast off for another adventure.
Yes, and that's the end.
Thoroughly enjoyed that movie, I did.
Good. I'm glad. It was a good movie.
It was a good movie, yeah.
I think it stands up, Star Trek or not Star Trek, it's a good film.
Yeah. The whole whale thing is a little bit
It's silly.
silly. Yeah.
It's not the silliest movie from the 80s.
No, of course not. No.
Is there anything you thought didn't work?
No.
No.
No. There was no obvious weaknesses here.
Yeah. So that's the end of what you would call a trilogy, Star Trek 2, 3 and 4. How well do you think they worked together as one story?
I think they worked very well together. Yeah,
Kind of built up, like each one was better than the one
I would say
before,
so.
in our
Yeah.
view. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
So yeah, and they work well viewing them together as well. I think if you sit and watch them over, like we did over the space of 3 weeks.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was enjoyable. I think
they stand up well. Even the acting's fine.
The acting is fine. Yeah, and they have added, as we've discussed, they've added that touch of humour into the movies that perhaps wasn't there as much in the show. Which I think these are the type of things you have to add when you're expanding it from the 25 minutes to the near 2 hour. It would be very dull if it was all just...
I mean, it was 50 minutes, the series.
That's what I said.
Okay. Do you want some trivia? Have you got any more thoughts?
I just felt like 25 minutes was so enjoyable. Flew by.
Yeah. Warp speed.
Exactly.
Right, trivia. Released November 86. Directed by Leonard Nimoy. Talked about him in the previous podcast and also more in the podcast for Turnabout Intruder in season 3. He's also got a story credit for the film. Harv Bennett, credited for the story and the screenplay, discussed him more on Wrath of Khan podcast. Go back and listen to that if you want to hear about him. Similarly, Nicholas Mayer has a screenplay credit and you can go back and hear about him also on the Wrath of Khan podcast. Other screenplay credits go to Steve Merson and Peter Craigs. Their work was more or less completely replaced by Bennett and Mayer, and neither of them has much more on their screenwriting CV. Catherine Hicks played Dr. Jillian Taylor. This was her only Star Trek appearance. Maybe better known for her roles on Child's Play, or in Child's Play, and on Seventh Heaven, where she was 11 seasons opposite Stephen Collins from the motion picture.
We won't mention him.
No. She also was in Peggy Sue Got Married and TV shows like Diagnosis Murder, and she got a Primetime Emmy nomination for the TV movie Marilyn, The Untold Story. She is now 70 years old, still active.
Very good.
Robert Ellenstein played the Federation president, and he would go on to later appear in an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. He also appeared in films like North by Northwest and Brewster's Millions, as well as TV shows like ER and one episode of Columbo, where he played Stein in the classic episode Any Old Port in a Storm. I think that's part of the Wine Club.
Must be, yeah.
He died in 2010 when he was 87. Brock Peters played Admiral Cartwright. He would go on to reprise that role in the 6th motion picture before being cast as Joseph, the father of Deep Space Nine's protagonist Benjamin Sisko, over 6 appearances on that show. He was also in films like Soylent Green, TV shows like Murder, She Wrote, and was the voice of Darth Vader in the original radio drama adaptations of the first 3 Star Wars films.
Brock is a very American name. You wouldn't get a Brock around about here, would you?
No. He died in 2005 when he was 78. John Schuck played the Klingon ambassador. He also would reprise the role in the 6th motion picture before going on to appear in Deep Space Nine, Voyager and Enterprise in various different roles. He was also in films like MASH and Dick Tracy, as well as TV shows like Law & Order, Diagnosis Murder and Babylon 5, and he's now 82 years old. Jane Wyatt reprised her role as Amanda, Spock's mother, from the original series episode Journey to Babel, which was nice. I don't think she was doing much acting anymore at this time. You can hear more about her on the podcast for that episode, and similarly for Mark Leonard, who played Sarek. Horror icon Michael Berryman played an officer on the Saratoga. He would go on to play a different minor role in the 5th motion picture and another on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Hills of Eyes and Weird Science.
Yeah, best known for playing Pluto in the Hills of Eyes, he also appeared in Weird Science, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and My Science Project. And he's now 73 years old, still active.
Good.
Tennis star Vijay Amritraj played the captain of the Yorktown. This was his only Star Trek role. He also showed up in Octopussy opposite Roger Moore.
You say star, I mean, I'm not a huge tennis fan, but I've heard of the big names. Was he a big name?
Well, at the time, he was quite well known.
Was he?
His company became one of the leading multimedia production companies in Asia, and he's now 68 years old and hasn't been acting for over 20 years.
What's his best in a major?
I don't know.
I mean, is he a major star?
Oh, at the time. He certainly was big. He was big in India.
Second round of the French Open once?
I don't know. You'd have to look it up.
Yeah, I might do that.
A couple more Columbo connections. Alex Henteloff played Dr. Nichols, who was fooled by Scotty and McCoy, and went on to play a pawnbroker in Strange Bedfellows.
A what broker?
Pawnbroker.
Okay.
opposite guy at Cheers, whose name I forget right now.
Yeah, so, George Wendt.
Yes. And Raymond Singer was a young doctor at Mercy Hospital in the film, and he played a dentist in Uneasy Lies the Crown. Some other trivia: transparent aluminium was developed in 2009 at the physics department in Oxford University.
Now, do you know why? This might be an urban legend, an urban myth, why Americans mispronounce aluminium, because there is an I in there.
No, I don't know what the reason is.
I have heard that the first factory that they built for the production of this, there was a big sign outside with the word, and they misspelt it and dropped an I from it, and everyone called it aluminum.
That sounds like an urban myth.
Yeah, I'd like to believe it.
Yeah. There's an extra early in this movie who talks to Uhura and Chekhov when they're looking for directions to the nuclear vessels. She wasn't given any lines to speak, was told just to act naturally, and she herself was surprised when what she said ended up in the film, and because she had lines they had to sign her up for the Screen Actors Guild.
Very good.
She took the extra part partially to pay for her car to be released after it was towed away to let them make the film.
Well, there you go.
All worked out in the end.
Wonder, did she go on to do anything else?
No.
Oh.
A scene was apparently written but not filmed, or certainly was in the novel, depending who you believe, explaining that Saavik stayed on Vulcan because she was pregnant with the Proto-Spock's baby. Or, depending who you believe, she was absent because Leonard Nimoy and Herb Bennett thought there was no need for a second Vulcan to be hiding their identity running around Earth.
Sounds more plausible.
Yeah. This is the only Star Trek film where nobody dies, as long as you assume the Saratoga survived and nobody was killed on Earth by the apocalyptic weather, and the 2 Klingon ships that were lost were unmanned.
But the time travel thing could negate all that, couldn't it?
No, because they come back after that.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's nonsense.
Yeah. Despite his negative comments about Star Trek 3, Ronald Reagan viewed this film at the White House on the 20th of December 1986. No one knows what he thought about it.
Even him at the time.
Well, the whalers are speaking Finnish, even though in real life Finns haven't whaled since the 19th century. The part of Jillian Taylor was originally offered to Eddie Murphy.
What?
It was rewritten when he turned it down to be a female. He was originally going to be a UFO nut that got involved, and he turned it down to make The Golden Child instead, and reportedly regretted it.
No, I don't think you wouldn't have regretted it, because I mean, a tiny little part in one of the Star Trek movies isn't.
No, he was in the main sidekick. There was a bigger part, I think, for him.
The Golden Child is underrated. A lot of people don't like it. Charles Dance is in that. There's a nice scene with a can of Pepsi.
Okay.
Animation, stop thing, animation. No, I like the Golden Child.
Yeah. He's apparently a Star Trek fan.
Not that big a fan.
Well, I turned it down, so.
Yeah.
Right, next time we are going to take a look at the 5th feature film, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. That's a lot of alliteration there.
Yeah.
It's so bad that they had to make another one after it to get rid of the taste.
Okay.
So, until then.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.